Hello, my name is John O'Connor, or Cucaburr, and I'm going to speak today on Finnegan's Wake from page 268 to about the top of 268 to the top of 270 of the Penguin edition of Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. Uh, well, pertaining to the phrase in the right hand margin, which encapsulates this whole vignette, um, this whole section to the bottom of page 270 exhibits how the interplay between boys and girls, or young men and young women, uh, in a romantic setting, as they mature between them, gives them a sense of rights and collective tradition, and how uh, something as innocuous as grammar has a libidinous ulterior element to it in the dynamic amid the genders, and how at the same time it is the backbone of freedom and heritage. Now, the phrase in the right hand margin is early notions of acquired rights and the influence of collective tradition upon the individual. Now, uh, basically, however, freedom isn't free. And as Shem says, it all comes down to violence. You know, the violence of the passion of the Messiah, Shem and honor bound to the cross of his own cruel fiction, Sean suffering the theogonies of the damned in the mental hospital, and so wider. So we'll begin. It says, soon Jemmy Johns will cudgel about some arithmetic or other over Brown and Nolan's divisional tables. So Jemmy John's is a pun on a demijohn, which is a wine bottle in a wicker base. But it's a pun on Shem and Sean. Shem and Sean embody all the wars where, war of Cain and Abel, or all the twins throughout the ages in mythology. Shem and Cain and Abel, Romulus and Remus, Jacob and Esau, Castor and Pollux, Castor and Pollux. I said that, I think. Anyhow, but Agni and Indra, Balder and Oder, things like that, twins like that. So they will cudgel about, this is where the violence comes in. They will cudgel about some arithmetic, not arithmetic. Arithmos is Greek for number, but here it's rhythmetic, like music. The Greeks applied math to music. Over Brown and Nolan's divisional tables, this is dividing over what's ignoble and what's noble. And while they're doing it, she of Minion's novice, she is Issy, or it could be ALP. These are the female archetypes of the wake. They're the daughter, Issy, and wife, ALP, and Olivia Pluribel of the male archetype, HCE, of Finnegan's Wake. He takes the place of Finn McCool after he dies in the beginning. Hoc Corpus, Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, anyhow. So she of Minion's novice, that could be novice, a combination of novice and novena. Charlie being Cupid for Mug's wumping, Brewster's grubbiness, Ant's avarice, and Grossopper's grain gaff. Now, these are all references to Aesop's fables, the fox and the grapes. Shem appropriates it as the mooks and the gripes, a fable about, the Henry II conquering Ireland, and then the ant and the grasshopper. But anyhow, she's Charlie being Cupid, or stupid, for falling having feeling for these unsavory characters. So anyhow, with her two petit pou and her je m'en fichu will sit and knit on sofa. That is, two petit pou means a tiny bit, and je m'en fichu means I don't care. So she's, folding her minion arms and sighing over herself, as it were. Will sit and knit on sofa, and sofa refers to the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, but it also in Italian means the same old story. So she's nattering away as she knits the same old story. But the what's funny is in the footnotes, it says, "Let me blush to think of all those halfway hoist pullovers," and she's knitting in halfway house pullover. She's knitting for charity, basically. So then it goes on to say, stew of the evening, bookful stew, and that's from Alice in Wonderland. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup, and here it's bookful stew, which refers to the wake itself. And then we have an Abodic and a Boss in the Thimble Theater, and Abodican is a diminutive body. The Thimble Theater was a 20s comic strip featuring Popeye. So Abodican refers to Popeye himself. But then Bodkin means needle. So that's the woman of the house sewing away, and she's the boss in turn in the Thimble Theater, the home. So we have both parents being featured there. So anyhow, then we have, but all is her inborn. Now, all is her inborn, but also we have a pun there, herringbone, which symbolizes tradition, heritage, craftsmanship, and women's intuition. And then it states in the left-hand margin, will you carry my can and fight the fairies? Now, this is what a little girl asked a little boy in Ireland, or I don't know if they don't do that today probably, but they did in the past. And so if she's going to fall for, this is, pertaining to Issy, and if she's going to fall for these mugs wumping and grocers' grain gaffes, she wants to have a little protection, so. And then we have it from, and this is intend to understand, and then we have it from Grandma's Grammar. She asked if there is a third person, masculine, feminine, or neuter being spoken of bad, it moves prosodes from a person speaking to her second, which is the direct object that has been spoken to, with, and at. So Shem's being very clever here, as he often is, about this direct object that has been spoken to, with, and at. So say we have Fred is talking to Jane about the third person. Well, first of all, I should say abad, spoken abad. Abad refers to Abaddon, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. So apparently, if you're speaking to somebody about a third person, they're dangling, if only in mind, over the bottomless pit. And they move prosodes, and prosode it refers to prosody, which is the science or art of versification, such as metrical, structural, and stanza forms, and so forth. But be that as it may, if you have some fellow like Fred talking to Jane about Billy and says, Billy went to the store to buy a book, how Fred says the word book, because book is a direct object in this case, is what he thinks of Jane. So if he says, Billy bought a book, or Billy bought a book, or Billy bought a book, is what he thinks of Jane. So, very interesting. This is the genius, yes. So, take the dative with his ablative. Now, dative comes from dare, which means to give, and ablative, that's from oblicium, the past participle of affair, which means to offer in Latin. So, an oblate is a person that's devoted to the religious life, but has not taken vows. So, it's got many entendres. As Shem is the way with Shem. You could be going out on a date with this person not dedicated to the religious life, but with not taking vows, or it could be a gift, with his offering. Yeah, it could be any number of things. But I should comment on the left-hand margin. It says Alma Mater's auctioneer. Now, Mathers was indeed an auctioneer in Dublin. Alma Mathers. The best I can do with that is that's a pun on alma mater, which means foster mother in Latin. And just as your mother gives birth to your body, you're a man's lover. She gives birth to his soul. So I guess you could call her his foster mother. So and but as far as maybe she feels auctionable because she has to sit on wait to see how this man speaks the direct object when she's talking to him, maybe. So she feels auctionable, maybe. I don't know. So anyhow, for even if obsolete is always of interest, so referring to the ablative absolute, which is a grammatical term. But anyhow, so even if obsolete, so even if his religious life is over, it is always of interest, so spake Grandma, in the emphasis of her imperative. Only mind your genders toward his reflexives. And, that refers to verbs that refer to the subject as well as the object. So you have to be generous toward his reflexives, his reflexes and so forth, such that I was your grappa. So, you have to make sure the mood is true and not false. Bots trousen, whore a man off. So in the left-hand margin, it says, old Gavelkind the Gamper, and he's as daft as your Erse. Now, I don't know what the heck Gavelkind has to do with this situation, because that has something to do with partitioning of land from a father to his sons. How that pertains here, I really don't know. But he obviously doesn't hear her say this, because he's daft as her Erse. But nevertheless, she says, bots trousen, whore a man off. So apparently he's drunk and horny here. And she says, stop it. Or emal oof, German for stop it. And bots trousen is from pots tausen, which is an expletive, which means like 1,000 goshs. So then it says, when him was me heathen, and mine, what the Ludi's saying, his intellectual pygmy hop. So heathen is Greek for pleasure, but the footnote says fresh devil and red herring. So that's why you ran away to sea, Mrs. Lappy. Leave me, Lachlan, for you have sensed. So fresh devil for freck devil refers to French devil, the Jean Bart, a 17th century privateer. He's also a red herring. He's got red hair, but he's also a red heron, which are found in the sea. And red herring is used to distract from the main issue. So he's distracting from this wordplay we're in the midst of. And he takes Issy out to sea. And that's why she ran away to sea, which is what a river does. It runs away to sea. And that's the metaphor of the whole book is ALP as a river. And then Mrs. Lappy, leap me, log lawn, for you have sensed. And leap me is another way of saying sexual congress. Lock lawn, for you have sensed. Leap me, lock lawn, for you have sensed is a way of, that's what a person says when they enter the confessional. A woman enters the confessional, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. But here it's, make love to me, Scandinavian, for you have sensed. So Shem can be pretty blue at times. So anyhow, and then we have what the Ludi's saying. That's from Vasta Leute Sagen, is intellectual pick-me-up, and that's from, it's put on intellectual pick-me-up. And here it's intellectual, means fragmented pick-me-up, and it's a pun on an intellectual giant, but I guess Shem was somewhat biased, thinking women were, he had some biased notions. But anyhow, a pygmy is the opposite of a giant. So, and then he has a washable in the footnote, a washable, lovable, floatable doll. And I guess that's just another term for a topic of conversation. So, and then there is comfortism in the knowledge that often hate on first hearing comes of love by second sight. So yeah, you might at first hearing somebody hate them, but at the second time you see them, you might fall in love with them. So then you have your little syntax in the dunk of subjunctions, dual and dual with pure, prude with plurial. So syntax, that's the syntax is a pun on syntax, and subjunctions is a pun on subjunctive mood. And syntax is the relationship between an arrangement of words, clauses, and phrases, and formation of sentences and sentence structure, just as syntax pertains to the arrangement of and relationship between young people and the formation of society. And this harkens back to the right-hand margin phrase, early notions of acquired rights and the influence of collective tradition upon the individual. And now, as far as subjunctive mood, the subjunctive mood is designating or of the mood of a verb, which is used to express hypothesis, desire, supposition, and possibility. And you have to be in a willing suspension of disbelief, I suppose, but or you have to go along with the metaphor that in a subway junction, desire, possibility, and supposition are implied between the sexes of young people. So anyhow, that's that. Also, men in twos duel, although dueling is outlawed nowadays, and the prudish walk with the lascivious. So, but even the aorious chaperon, whatever plotted perfect, and then pretty goats and heck genua omnia, may perhaps chance to be about to be in the case to be becoming a pale Peterite. So, the aorious chaperon, well, aorious is it comes from the ancient Greek, I guess, but it's an inflectional form of a verb, as all verbs are that aren't the infinitive, I guess. But it simply denotes a occurrence of an action, a past occurrence of an action, without reference to completeness, duration, or repetition. So it's a long definition for a simple verb, because it's like a verb, like it's a phrase like he asked, or she kissed, or they danced. So apparently this chaperone or chaperound is very discreet and frank. And he says, whatever plottered perfect. Now, plottern is German for gossiped. Plaudo is Latin for I clap. So he gossips perfectly, in the perfect tense, but perfectly as well. And then predidotes and haec uh, genua omnia. So predidotes, he gossips about pretty girls that dote on people and so forth, and haec genua omnia, all those knees. He likes to look at the ladies, and but both these are puns on petticoats and haec genera omnia, all those things. Nevertheless, he may perhaps chance to be about to be in the case to be becoming. Case means fall. So he's about to fall. He may nevertheless be about to fall to be becoming a pale Peterite. That's a pun on the past preterite, which in English is like, it's a double shot of the past. Like he went to the mall yesterday, or he flew a kite yesterday. That's the past preterite. Here it's written a pale Peterite, reference to Paul and Peter, but also Peter Wright, who wrote a scandalous book on Parnell and Gladstone. So the gist of the passage is, even though you have this discreet, frank chaperone who talks about petticoats and pretty dotes and all those knees and all those things, nevertheless, he might fall to becoming a scandalmonger. So, anyhow, despite all your tense accusatives, which is funny because the accusative is not a tense, it's a declension. Whilstly your wall floored and your wall flowered, like your geraniums, and geranium is a flower, or the gerund is a verbal noun, like standing, like a wallflower. Standing is a gerund. So anyhow, it's a wild kitten, my child. It's a wild kitten, my dear, who can tell a wilkling from a warthog. For you may be as practical as is predicable, but you must have the proper sort of accident to meet that kind of being with a difference. Now, difference and accident have grammatical overtones, but we'll just brush over that for now and address ourselves to the meaning of the footnotes. So the footnote for difference is, if she can't follow suit, Renee goes to the pack. So she finds this man with a difference, but this man with a difference, his attitude is, if she can't follow suit, Renee goes to the pack. And Rene Descartes means reborn of the cards. So this man who she falls in love with or finds, who has a difference, and that's the ablative of difference, is like better than or something. So this man, he's better than the rest, whatever. And so nevertheless, if she can't follow suit, if she can't slave to his methodiousness or whatever, then he's going to go back to the volume of Finnegan's Wake or whatever. That's the implication here. Because the wake is often compared to a pack of cards, like when Yawn is lying recumbent on the I forget the Asnock or something like that. They approach him with their hurts, clops, spites, and daemons. Hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds. And there's another place in this chapter where the wake is compared to a pack of cards. So be that as it may. And then it says, flame at his fumbles, but freeze on his fists. And fumbles apparently is a pun on fambles, which means hands. So freeze at his mistakes or come alive at his hands, but freeze on his fist. And fist is tantamount to improper frictions, I guess, because that's what it says in the footnote. Improper frictions is maledictions, and mensuration makes me mad. So improper frictions, I think that's genius. Well, an improper fraction, upon an improper fractions, an improper fraction is like when the numerator is equal to or greater than the denominator. But here it's an improper friction, like when a man rubs up against a woman in an improper manner. And that's indeed is a malediction when you speak ill against somebody. So the two are equivalent according to Shem. And then he adds, mensuration makes me mad. Now, mensuration means measurement, and I can identify with that. I remember being in high school and trying to learn calculus, and my father telling me that calculus was the measurement of the space under a curve, and being angry and not being able to forstand that. But that was just me. And also, the pun is on menstruation makes me mad. And in the Judeo-Christian tradition of old, anyway, not anymore, but menstruation during that time, the woman was considered unclean, and so a man couldn't make love to her. So I can see how during that time a man could be made mad. And then finally, men's urination. I mean, a little boy, with castration anxiety, trying to urinate next to his father. I've heard men say that they couldn't urinate next to their father. Whether it made them mad, I don't know. But anyhow, so that's that. And now then, every letter is a godsend. Ardent Aries, brusque Boreas, and glib Ganymede, like zealous Zeus, the omegistest of all. So, yeah, this is a lot like the wind blows wherever it pleases from the gospel. But every letter is a godsend. Ardent Aries, Aries is the god of war of the Greeks. Brusque Boreas, the Greek god of the north wind, and glib Ganymede. Ganymede wasn't a god, he was just an immortal Trojan prince who was favored by Zeus. And then zealous Zeus. And then Zeus, the omegistest, he is of the greatest. Shem just anglicizes it there by making him of the greatest. Homegistos means very great in Greek, but Shem uses the Irish influence here, makes it O Megistus, O the greatest. And this refers to Zeus or Deus himself, basically. He's of the greatest. Oh, the greatest. That's like the son of a prince in Gaelic. Oh, Brian means son of a prince. But in my mind, this means that he's, of all the pagan gods, he's the greatest next to the Trinity, next to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Next to that, Zeus is the greatest. So Zeus is greater than Odin and Thor and Brahma and Vishnu and the Chinese and Japanese and South American, North American gods. Deus, or Zeus, is the greatest next to the Trinity, Omegistus. So that's that. But anyhow, let me just get my notes straight. So, to me or not to me, satisfy quest on, verbung sap. Yeg sui vos war a gentleman, thou are, I am a queen. Is the game over? The game goes on. Cook. Search me. The beggar the maid, the bigger the mauler, and the greater the patriarch, the griefer the pinch. And that's what your doctor knows. So, to me or not to me, that seems like the ultimate solipsism from Shem, from to be or not to be. But he's saying it to a woman, satisfy quest on, verbum sap. verbum is German for wooing. Instead of verbum sop, the word to the wise, it's wooing to the wise. And Yigsus for a gentleman, well, he's equivocating as to whether he's a gentleman. And then, if thou art, I am a whore. So then it goes, is the game over? Is the game of love over? The game goes on. It drives the man crazy. Cook, cook. Search me. The beggar the maid, the bigger the mauler. That is, the smaller the maid, the bigger the overcomer. And the greater the patriarch, the grief of the pinch. It is the greater the father figure, the more keenly the son feels the pinch of castration anxiety. And that's what your doctor knows. And that refers to the Divine Comedy, where the fellow, his name is Francesca de Muramini. He says that in Divine Comedy. Francesca de Muramini says, well, he doesn't say the greater the patriarch, the grief of the pinch. What he says is, and this is the greatest of woe, the bitterest of woes, is to remember in your wretchedness old happy times. But Shem here makes it the greater the patriarch, the grief of the pinch, and that's what your doctor knows. And the doctor here in the Divine Comedy is Virgil, the man who accompanies Dante into the underworld. But here the doctor referred to as Freud. So, yeah. And I should also explain the left margin. It says Andante Humoroso. And Andante Humoroso, well, it's a play on metronome tempo. Andante means walking in Latin. And basically, the tempo for that is 72 to 76 beats per minute, not 50-50 as it says here. What encompasses Andante 50-50 is Largo, 40 to 60 beats per minute. But it's very curious. But what he's saying here with Andante Humoroso is Dante, despite having been called the Divine Comedy, the Divine Comedy is not funny. I mean, it's called the comedy because it has a happy ending. Dante reunites with Beatrice in the final in the end, but it's not funny. It's that's why he says it's humoroso in this thing, the beat, the tempo. I mean, I don't know much about music, but anyhow, but what this pertains to in the text, I really don't know. I mean, Sean is self-conscious here of his sin because a woman is. I've heard Germans say a woman is a man's sin, but he's conscious of his sin, and so. But you would think he would not be humorous. He would be unhumorous. But it's very strange. So anyhow, that's that, and and then I've got this whole theory cooked up for the left-hand margin Greek saying "Uk elabon Pauline," and "Uk elabon Pauline" means they did not capture a city in Greek, but it's a gloss on French, "Où est la bonne Pauline?" Where is the beautiful Pauline? Now, I've got this whole theory of that refers to Aeschylus's play Seven Against Thebes, where you have these two sons, Eteocles and Polynices. I don't know if I'm getting that pronunciation right, but they're the sons of Oedipus. And Oedipus put a curse on these two sons because they treated him shoddily during his exile in Colonus. And he cursed them to die by each other's hands and for that shoddy treatment. And so, anyhow, so these two sons designed, since they inherited, that was their patrimony, was the throne of Thebes. But they couldn't decide on how to you know rule. So they rule conjointly. One son would rule for a year, and then they would alternate year by year. One sitting on the throne for a year, and then the other one sitting on the throne for a year. But what happened is Eteocles sat for a year. He started out the ruling, but after the end of a year, he did step down to let Polynices have his term. So Polynices, of course, was infuriated, and he gathered together 6 warriors at the head of an army, and with himself that made 7, and they charged the 7 gates of Thebes. Therefore, you have 7 against Thebes. It's Thebes, and however, Thebes was victorious, and they beat down the onslaught of Polynices and his warriors. However, in the melee, Polynices and Eteocles, as per the curse, killed each other. Now, I got this strange kind of theory that, Freud said that during the ages of 3 and 6, a child encounters the Oedipus complex. And he also has to overcome the castration anxiety between those years, 3 and 6, during which he has a sense that he wants to murder his father and make love to his mother. And then he also, because of these feelings, thinks his father is going to get back at him by cutting off his penis. But he has to, through sheer mental effort, between the ages of 3 and 6, he gets over these. He reconciles these urges. Now, in my mind, Shem seems to imply with such a phrase as the Oedipus complex. Excuse my obscenities or gauche use of these terms, but with such a phrase as the Oedipus complex, for instance, it implies that a man has to familiarize himself with a woman or have sexual congress thereof in order to overcome the Oedipus complex. That it's not simply mental effort at the ages of 3 and 6, but that a man has to familiarize himself with a woman's body to overcome the Oedipal complex. And so that's where the ou et la bonne Pauline comes in. And to continue the metaphor longer, or the allegory, or whatever you want to call it, Polynices and Eteocles have to make love to Pauline, as it were, hopefully at separate times, and to acquire carnal understanding. And then perhaps, Polynices could have conquered with wise concord and, wise concord and peaceableness rather than storming the city. And then they could have ruled as like Spartan ephors or consuls of the Senate of Rome. Those two ruled doubly. So that's my strange theory of ou et la bonne Pauline. So anyhow, I could could easily deny that, but I'll just let it stand for what it's worth. So, oh love, it is the common nounest thing, how it passions both the Plutos and the pop. Now, this I find very interesting. Shem, he gets this from rum, it is the comicalest thing, how it tickles, blah, 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 blah. So here he equates like a true alcoholic love with alcohol, and also love with comedy, which I think is apt. Um, but I think it's interesting is a common nounist thing. Now, a common noun is a general term for a person, place, or thing without specifying a particular individual or location. So essentially, it is a generic name for a class of things, such as a city, a dog, or a teacher. It is uncapitalized. So, according to Shem, a common noun in the speaking of a munda conversazione, or a regular conversation between a woman and a man, or two people of the opposite sex, stands pat for love, and it pashes or strikes both the rich and the poor. So, for example, in the sentence, I went to the mall, bought a book, and sat down and had a cup of coffee. Mall, book, cup, coffee, those all stand in for love. I think that's fascinating. Or, I was in my room, someone knocked at the door, I let them in, and we had a conversation. Room, door, conversation. Those all stand in for love. I think that's fascinating. And so this is the late, great Jimmy Joyce. So, anyhow, but what's interesting too is Long and Short's primer of black and white wenchcraft. That's the footnote. So the Long and Short's primer of black and white wenchcraft. Well, Lewis and Short wrote a Latin dictionary, and the primer refers to the small primer, which was a detailed description of the various ranks within early medieval Irish society. So basically, this is saying that the long and short of the Roman Church and the Roman Empire is that they thought that the various ranks of the medieval 6th century Irish society were the various differences therein in the various ranks of medieval 6th century Irish society were tantamount to the differences between common nouns. I mean, that's what the Romans thought of medieval 6th century Irish society as so much black and white wenchcraft, and black and white wenchcraft is a pun on black and white of the written page. And so anyhow. So moving right along, and Pop, she and Pop, and egg she active, or spoon she passive. All of them fine clauses in Lindleys and Murrays never brought the participle of a present to a spondent hortitricy. Vindictively, I say it, from a post-conditional future. And the footnote says the gaggle's all out. I guess that's a flock of geese all out. I don't understand that really. But so egg she active, and egg, well, ego is how you say the word for ego in Latin. So her ego has to be active as well as her ovum ovum, yeah, as well as your ovum, and so yeah, and or spoongy passive. Uh, all of them find clauses and lilies, and more. Lindley Murray wrote a grammar of the English language. So none of these brought a participle of a present, a participle of the present. So a present participle is like a gerund. It ends in ing, but it can be like a verbal adjective or a verbal verb. um, like I am singing, or adjectively, it would be like the singing birds or something like that. Here it would be like the laughing girl. So, but it never brought those clauses never brought the participle of the present to a despondent hortitracy. So despondent refers to the deponent. And English doesn't have a deponent verb, a passive verb that acts actively. Um, deponent hortitracy, and hortor is also a deponent verb. Hortitrix is a noun, but she that incites is what it means. So basically, you have like, say, a participle of a present is like a laughing girl. Never made a laughing girl into a despondent, acted upon moodiness. Never brought a girl to a place of despondent, act upon moodiness that incites a man. What it seems to be saying. So that's the best I can do with that. And then Shem says, vindicatively, from a post-conditional future. And that's a pun on the indicative. But here it's the vindicative. Shem seems to be saying this. I mean, he is a father. He had two children. And maybe he feels that vindicatively after watching Nora give birth to two children. He has that sense of what I just said about the despondent hortitracy. He feels that vindicatively from after having watched Nora give birth to two children from her post-conditional future. Post-conditional means after childbirth, after having given birth to a child. So, sorry, I hope I didn't screw that up. And then we have quantity counts, though accents falter. And that refers to classical scansion of poetry, whereby it's scanned by long and short syllables. I could go into it, but it's sort of complicated. And then accents are how they're scanned in English poetry. You know, like da-dum, 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 you know. If music be the food of love, play on. Iambic pentameter, for instance. But also it's a pun on, you can know a quantity of languages, but your accent might falter. And then yoking apart and obliterations parsed to one side. Now yoking, that's zugma, and like he works his work, I mine, or she opened her heart and her door for the stray kitten. It yokes subjects to one verb. So, but here it's yoking apart. It's funny because yoking, when you're with a girl, it's like when you joke, you yoke your heart to a girl. When you joke. And obliterations means indirect speech, parsed to one side. And so then it goes on. A brat, Alana, can choose from so many, be he a solicitor's appendix. And solicitor means I am being seduced. Appendix is a pun on apprentice. A pipe clerk, a free functionist fly swatter, that perfect little cad from the languors and weakness of limber-limbed lassohood, till the head, back, and heart aches of waxed up womanage and heaps on heaps of other things too. Now the left-hand margin says, "I'll go for that small poly if you'll suck to your Leban's quatch." Now that's Shem telling Sean, "You can stick to your Leban's quatch," which is Greek. Leban is German for life and Arabic for milk, and quatch means nonsense. So he's saying to Sean, you can sit there and tell people what the meaning of yoking is and all that nonsense. I'll go for the little Polly. So, and then he says, "Note the respectable Irish distressed ladies and the Murray Mustard Froth Blowers of Humphreys Association." So this is like a little advert in the middle of the paragraph. Irish distressed ladies used to settle the accounts for people whose rent was in arrears. And the Mary Mustard Froth Blowers is a pun on the ancient order of froth blowers, a spoof on the on Freemasonry in the 20s. And as far as Humphreys Town, well, that's the eponymous name of the main character of Finnegan's Wake. Attack first, quack, quicks after. It's just attack first, ask questions later. Beware how in that hissed subtale of Schlanger lies liaison to tease arrears. So beware in that hissed and history of the snake, of the subtle tale of the snake of slander, lies a connection to tease our ears. But Shem is saying behind this history is something evil. And there's nothing evil behind Finnegan's Wake. I mean, it's all for the good. You know, man is good. He's a sinner, but that's an eternal category, according to Kierkegaard. Man is good. You know. So, divert and bowed, set proper penchant. So, to the green who bows to their youth, the green of youth who bow to their object, the object must set a proper liking. But learn from that ancient old tongue to be middle old modern to the minute. So the ancient tongue here is Greek, which has a middle voice, which basically is the subject, both performs and experiences the action. That's the middle voice of Greek. So here what Shem means to be middle old modern to the minute is that, like if I utter the word Padma or Plutos, in uttering it, I'm being modern to the minute, because I'm uttering it in the year 2025. But I experience its ancientry. It's like, there's probably a Greek word for it, to be transported back into ancientry. I'm going back into ancient India when I say Padma, or ancient Greece when I say Plutos. I'm being middle old modern to the minute. So that's what happened to that. A spitter that can be depended on. Well, you don't have to be spiteful, although Shem implies that. But he's saying a spitter that can be depended on. And I don't think you have to be spiteful to utter the words of the wake. You can be loving and caring and so forth. Though Wonder Lawns lost us forever. Alas, she broke the glass. So Wonder Lawns lost us forever, and I think again that's a sense of the past has lost us forever. You know, ancient India, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. But alas, she broke the glass, and that might be the glass that separates the ancient world from the present time. But the next passage I don't understand. A little locker through the leafery, ours is mystery of pain. And locker is Dutch for tempter. So here we have this tempter, and I mean, it's sort of positing all us men as sort of pedophiles, you know. Ours is mystery of pain, and then it posits the mystery of the Eucharist as pertaining to pedophilia. It's just very strange. I don't understand it. because pain is pain is French for the Eucharist or bread. So someone more edified would probably be able to explain that better than me. Then we're finally at the end. Thanks for staying with me this long. You may spin on Youthlet's bike, and multi-please your Mike and Nike with your kick shoes on the algebrars. Revolve the Virgil page in view. The O of woman is long, when burly those two muter sequenters. So from knee bobsy who never stray, will nim you nice and name the day. So basically, Shem here uses a bicycle as a locus for mathematics, from Euclid's geometry to multiplication to algebra. So Euclid's geometry, for some reason, some youth lit up a bicycle. How you light up a bicycle, I don't know. But Issy here spins on this bicycle that this youth lit up. And Euclid here is implied. I guess why Shem chooses a bicycle is perhaps because it has a lot of shapes, like the circle of the wheel, the cylinders of the tubes, the triangular shapes, the rectangular shapes, and so forth. And then we have multi-please your Mike and Nike. Well, I guess Issy multiplies, maybe by loving Mike and Nike, their idioglossary. Also, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. With her kickshaw is a toy or a trifle on the algebrars. So she multi-pleases them with her kickshaws on the algebrars. Algebra means a reunion of broken parts or restoration. And that's an Arabian term, not Greek, as the other one was. And the algebrars, so the algebrars, handlebars, they go crosswise, where the rest of the bike goes lengthwise, or something like that. It's almost like the bike is the XY axis and the handlebars are the Z axis, the Cartesian coordinates. But anyhow, so you have this bike is the locus of mathematics for some reason. Could be also because Shem calls it bicycles upon an Isaac, bicycles. And then we have, but vol the Virgil page in view. So that's a sorte Virgilianae, opening Virgil at random to get guidance in your life. So vol the Virgil page, but here he's referring to the wake, of course, opening Finnegan's wake at random to get guidance in your life. The O of woman is long. Now, woman, in the word woman, O is short. Perhaps woman, a woman, in a fit of passion, says, oh, thereby it would be long. When burly those two muter sequenter, and Shem and Sean are the two muters. Now, when a man kisses a woman, he mutes her, or when she kisses him, she mutes him. And sequenter, or frequenter, burly is a gloss on whirla, which is the Gaelic word for English. So English, it's not the Latin of Virgil, but English compared to Latin is like a sfidare, which is Italian for a challenge. So, anyhow, but it could be that the old woman is long, is because Virgil comes from virga, which means a rod or a staff, which is a phallic symbol. And so over against that, the O of woman is long, in a fit of passion. So then you have knee bob. See, from Nebob, see you never stray, will nim you nice and name the day. And so nim and name both come from the German word nehmen, which means to take. But the operative word here is day, which I believe comes from the Latin dei, D-E-I, which means of the god. As every foreign word in Finnegan's Wake is almost like that. It's of the god, or is like a god. To go back to Plutos and Padma, I mean, each one of those is of the god, you could say of the god Yeshua, the salvation boat. The salvation boat is Yeshua, HaMashiach, which is what the English call Jesus. But they could be of the god Yeshua. Yeah, so all the foreign words in Finnegan's Wake are like that. They're of the god, but they are the day as well, in an Egyptian sense. So it's very interesting. And so finally, we have the left-hand margin says Omera Feral, which is Irish for Publius Virgilius Mero, which is the Latin word for Virgil. So he uses the Irish word for Virgil because Virgil was born in Cisalpine Gaul, which is in Gaul, but in a Celtic influence part of Gaul. So anyhow, as for Verschwindibus, it is German for hocus pocus, meaning disappear, and perhaps ALP or Issy disappears behind Nebob. I don't know. She goes along with him and disappears. So that's it, people. Thank you for staying with me the whole time. It was somewhat exhaustive, as all these things are. But to reassert, Shem uses grammar as a template for collective tradition through which young girls and boys acquire some notion of rights in relation to each other. So with that, I'll end. Thank you very much.